Before we get into the video, could everyone please subscribe to my Endless Diary Tales channel? Thank you so much. In my previous life, I was childhood sweethearts with Andrew Sullivan. We grew up together, went to the countryside together, but in the end, we became a resentful couple. On the very day we registered our marriage, his junior schoolmate Sophia got drunk after being harassed by some thugs and jumped into the river to kill herself. Andrew believed it was all my fault. He treated me with cold indifference, ignored me completely, and allowed others to mock me for being unable to have children. I couldn't take it anymore, so I filed for divorce. I never imagined that not long after both of us would die in an accident. When I opened my eyes again, I was back on the day we went to register our marriage. Andrew gave me one look, then turned around and pedaled away on his bicycle. In that instant, I knew he had been reborn too. This time I decided to let him go and fulfill his wish to be with his precious Sophia. But unexpectedly, Andrew regretted everything. He knelt before me, begging me to give him another chance, only to be kicked to the ground by my rough, straightforward new husband Luke Harris. "You think you deserve her, Andrew?" Mark snapped. At Andrew's father's 60th birthday banquet, the Sullivan family once again humiliated me, mocking me as a barren hen. Andrew stood there watching coldly, just as he always did. I suddenly didn't want to endure it anymore. Right in front of all the relatives, I slammed the table and shouted, "I'm not the one who can't have children. It's your useless son. You're lying. My brother gets a checkup every year. He's perfectly healthy. He just doesn't want to have kids with a woman like you." Andrew's younger sister, Susan Sullivan, screamed furiously. I turned and glared at Andrew, shocked that he had actually told them something like that. The truth was, Andrew and I were only husband and wife in name. On the day we got our marriage certificate, Sophia had gotten drunk out of heartbreak, was harassed by thugs, and jumped into the river to end her life. Andrew blamed me for everything. If you hadn't insisted on getting the certificate that day, Sophia wouldn't have died. "You're the murderer." He had yelled at me back then. After that, he refused to share a room with me. I knew he was heartbroken and didn't argue. Sophia had been pitiful, her life short and tragic. I thought time would heal him. But I never expected Andrew would emotionally torture me for 20 long years. "Claire Miller, are you losing your mind again? Hurry up and apologize to Andrew," someone shouted. Andrew's eyes flickered and he said coldly, "She deserves it." With Andrew's approval, the Sullivan family grew even bolder in their mockery. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. "Andrew," I said firmly, "let's get a divorce." "You're insane," he snapped. But the Sullivan family cheered excitedly, urging him to agree. Some even began planning his next marriage right in front of me. In the end, Andrew accompanied me to the Civil Affairs office. The moment I held the divorce certificate in my hands, I felt lighter, as if a heavy burden had finally been lifted. "Claire, if you just go back and apologize to Dad, I'll remarry you," Andrew said as we stepped outside. "No one else will want you anyway." I stared at him, so self-righteous, acting as if he were doing me a favor. And rage flared up inside me. I spat on the ground. "The biggest mistake of my life was marrying you. God help me. In my next life, I never want to have anything to do with you again." "You'll regret this," Andrew shouted, his face twisted in anger. Just then, a small car lost control and came speeding toward us. I froze in shock, but someone shoved me hard out of the way. The piercing sound of the horn rang in my ears as the world blurred around me. I trembled and instinctively touched my head. That was the car accident. But the spot where I had been hit, there was nothing there. Now when I opened my eyes again, I found myself standing on a dusty dirt road. Looking around, I saw Andrew beside me holding his bicycle. He looked much younger. None of that cold, distant expression I had known for so long. A sudden thought struck me. I looked down at the papers in my hand. It was our stamped marriage application, our names written clearly on it, Andrew Sullivan and Claire Miller. I had been reborn. I was reborn once again on the very day Andrew and I were supposed to get our marriage certificate. The sharp ringing of a bicycle bell echoed in my ears, and before I could react, I was knocked to the ground. Andrew turned his bike around, glanced back at me with a complicated expression, but made no move to help me up. "Andrew Sullivan, you?" I began, but he cut me off. "I can't marry you today. Something urgent came up." You should go home by yourself, he said hastily. Leaving those words behind, Andrew jumped on his bicycle and pedaled away as if running from something. My palms clenched tightly, and a sharp sting spread through my hand. This hadn't happened in my previous life. There was only one explanation. Andrew had been reborn too. That's why he refused to marry me this time. He wanted to save Sophia, his little junior, from school. The biggest regret of his last life was losing her. She was all he ever thought about. How could he possibly notice me now? But what I didn't understand was this. If he'd hated me so much, if he had wished me dead, then why had he still saved me from being hit by that car in our past life? Watching Andrew's figure disappear down the road, I took a deep breath and turned away. It didn't matter anymore. I had no intention of marrying him this time around anyway. I got up from the ground, ignoring the curious stares from people nearby, and limped toward the post office. So many years had passed. I could barely remember the road we used to take to the countryside. It took me a long time to find my way back. When I finally arrived, I discovered that Andrew and Safia had taken over my house. Andrew hadn't wanted to keep living in the communal dorm for young volunteers, and there weren't enough rooms to give everyone separate housing. So I had spent my own money back then to build a new home. I never expected it would end up being taken over by them. Sophia was wearing the new clothes my mother had sent me by mail. She sat in Andrew's arms as he comforted her. They looked perfectly cozy together, just like a pair of shameless lovers. I gave a cold laugh and slammed the door loudly. Both of them jumped in fright. "Claire, what's wrong with you?" Andrew said, patting Sophia gently before turning to glare at me coldly. The look in his eyes made it clear. He still thought I was that same weak, pliable wife from our previous life, the one he could mold however he wanted. I sneered. "I should be asking what you two are doing here. This is my house. I'll do whatever I please. But you cuddling in my home. What do you think this place is?" Andrew froze, his expression stiffening. Clearly, he just remembered that this wasn't our past life. "Comrade Claire, don't misunderstand," Sophia stammered unsteadily, getting to her feet. "Someone tried to harass me today, and Andrew saved me." Andrew comforted her softly, clearly distressed. And the tender scene between them made my stomach turn. "If you want to flirt, do it somewhere else," I snapped. "Claire, what's wrong with you? Watch your mouth," Andrew shouted angrily. Did I say something untrue? I shot back. The door was wide open and you two were already clinging to each other. Who knows what would have happened if it were closed? "Stop spouting nonsense." Andrew's face turned red with fury. "There's nothing improper between Sophia and me." I gave a mocking smile. "Say that again and see if anyone believes it. You left your fiancé on the day you were supposed to get your marriage certificate to go hold another woman. What do you think people will say about me?" "I was trying to save her," Andrew said stiffly, his neck tense with anger. "Oh really?" I asked coldly. In broad daylight, who would dare to attack her like that? Are the police all useless now? And tell me this, how did you even know she was in danger? Andrew's face went pale. He had no answer. "Please don't blame Andrew," Safia cried as she ran over to grab my hand. "It's all my fault. Please don't fight because of me." I yanked my hand away in disgust. "Don't cry in someone else's house. It's bad luck. And stop calling me that disgusting name." "Thanks to you," I said mockingly. "Andrew and I never got that marriage certificate." Sophia stumbled backward, unsteady on her feet, and Andrew quickly caught her in his arms. "Claire, how can you be so cruel?" Andrew shouted at me angrily. I let out a sharp laugh. "Cruel? Fine, then let me show you what cruelty really looks like." Turning toward the door, I raised my voice so everyone outside could hear. "Hey everyone, come and see. On the day of our marriage registration, the groom ran off with his mistress, and now they're living together in my house." "Claire Miller, what nonsense are you spouting?" Andrew stormed over and shoved me hard. My legs, sore and weak from walking for hours, gave out beneath me, and I fell to the ground before I could react. The nearby young volunteers from the settlement saw the commotion and gathered around. "I didn't mean to," Andrew stammered, stepping back. "You just didn't stand steady yourself." I gave a bitter laugh. "Didn't stand steady?" I stared up at him. "Andrew, today you abandoned me at the marriage office, left me injured and alone. I walked 3 hours to get back here only to find you holding your mistress in your arms, while she's wearing the new clothes my mother sent me. You're disgusting. Tell me, what exactly have I wronged you in? Everyone turned their eyes toward Andrew and Safia. Safia hugged herself and cried pitifully. I know, Claire, you don't like me. But how can you accuse me like this? There's nothing between Andrew and me. He's just my savior. I fixed my cold gaze on her. You didn't even rest today, did you? Andrew and I took leave from work to get our marriage certificate. So tell me, why were you by the river at that exact time? Safia's face went pale and she stopped crying instantly. The other volunteers began whispering among themselves. So that's why we didn't see Safia today. She went off to do that, huh? One murmured. I called her this morning when we left, another said. She said she wasn't feeling well and needed the day off. Well, must be nice to have someone taking care of you, skipping work whenever you feel like it, and stealing someone else's fiancé too. Shameless. Another scoffed, taking another woman's man right in front of her. That's enough, Andrew barked, pulling Safia behind him protectively. You're just targeting her on purpose. I found those clothes for Sophia. They're not even expensive. She's my junior. What's wrong with her visiting my house? I sneered. Your house, Andrew Sullivan? Where do you get the nerve to call this place yours? Did you pay a single penny to build it? Without my permission, you went through my things and took what's mine. That makes you a thief, and thieves go to jail. Andrew looked stunned. But we're already husband and wife. Why do you have to be so petty? I laughed coldly. Are you out of your mind? We haven't even registered our marriage yet. Who's your wife? And besides, what makes you think I'd ever want a man as filthy as you? I pushed myself up, gripping a stool for balance, then took out the marriage registration form and tore it in half. Right in front of him. I'm not marrying you. Everyone fell silent for a moment before some began trying to calm me down. Claire, don't act on impulse, someone said gently. Marriage is a serious matter. Think it over carefully. You and Andrew have always been so close. Don't let this ruin your relationship. I smiled bitterly. He already hit me before we even got married. Who knows what he'd do after? Maybe he'd push me to my death next time. Oh wait, he already did, didn't he? Safia ran to Andrew's side, clinging to his hand. Andrew, please talk to her. Don't let her be mad at you. Andrew stared at me, his eyes full of mixed emotions. Are you serious? He asked harshly. I gave him a cold smile. The biggest mistake of my life was agreeing to marry you. What's all this commotion about? A voice called out. Aunt Lou, the team leader's wife, approached with a small basket in hand. Everyone instinctively stepped aside to give her room. Someone leaned close and whispered the whole story to her. Claire, don't talk nonsense, Andrew said nervously, his eyes fixed on me while tightening his grip on Sophia's hand. I turned my head away, refusing to let the tears fall. On what was supposed to be such a happy day, my wedding day, things had turned into an utter mess. Who wouldn't be furious? If my husband ever dared to hold another woman like that behind my back, I'd break his legs. Aunt Lou declared loudly. Andrew's face turned pale as he stammered. Mrs. Lou, this is all a misunderstanding. Claire just took it the wrong way. Oh really? Aunt Lou said with a sharp smile. You two clinging to each other like that? Was that a misunderstanding too? Her gaze lingered meaningfully on Andrew and Sophia. Startled, Andrew instinctively pulled his hand away. But I didn't miss the flash of anger and resentment that crossed Sophia's face. We all heard how that educated youth from the city, Andrew Sullivan, risked his life to save someone. Aunt Lou said. Everyone admired you for that. But how did you end up tangled up with Sophia Jang? She didn't show up for work today. Didn't even report sick leave. So what exactly was she doing by the river? All eyes turned to Sophia again. She gripped Andrew's sleeve and hid behind him like a frightened child. Sophia fell into the river by accident, Andrew explained stiffly. Oh, so she fell in by herself, Aunt Lou said with a cold smile. Then that doesn't really count as you risking your life for someone, does it? Andrew's expression darkened, and he lowered his head without a word. Since it was her own carelessness, then tell me, why are you two occupying someone else's house? Aunt Lou pressed, her tone sharp. Did our Shangyang village fail to arrange housing for Miss Jang? Andrew froze and instinctively looked at me. I turned away, refusing to meet his gaze. Good thing you're here, Aunt Lou, I said, stepping forward to greet her. Her husband, the village team leader, was an old army friend of my uncle's. Ever since I came to the countryside, they had always looked out for me. Don't worry, dear, Aunt Lou said firmly. Auntie will stand up for you. She then turned to glare at Sophia. I'll leave, Sophia mumbled, stepping toward the door. Wait, I said coldly. Take off those clothes before you go. Andrew immediately stepped in front of her protectively. Claire, that's enough. Just because someone's standing up for you doesn't mean you can bully others like this. You took my clothes without permission. I shot back, my voice icy. If you don't want to return them, I'll call the police. Andrew's face stiffened, but I didn't give him a chance to speak. It's just a piece of clothing. Are you really going to make a big deal out of it? He said with a frown. I narrowed my eyes. And who are you to tell me what to do? You have no right to speak for me. Forget it, Andrew, Safia said softly, slowly slipping off the coat. Hugging her arms around herself, she shivered. I'm cold, Andrew. Please take me home. Andrew threw the coat onto the floor without hesitation, then took off his own jacket and draped it over Sophia's shoulders. Shielding her with his arm, he led her away. What kind of man is that? Aunt Lou muttered, picking up the coat and brushing it off. Such a nice piece of clothing. If you don't want it, Claire, I'll take it home for my daughter to wear. I shook my head. Don't bother, Aunt Lou. I won't be wearing it. I'm not getting married anymore and I don't need something red and tainted with filth. Aunt Lou looked at me in surprise. I stared at Andrew's back, frozen where he stood. My voice was calm but steady. That coat, I said, was the only thing your family ever contributed to our wedding. Andrew didn't turn around. He simply pushed his bicycle forward and left with Sophia. After Aunt Lou and the other volunteers comforted me and went on their way, I sat down heavily on the ground. Even now, I still couldn't understand it. How had Andrew changed so completely? We had grown up on the same street. Andrew and I had grown up together since we were kids. When we were little, he was thin and frail, often bullied by other children. I couldn't stand seeing that and always stepped in to defend him. From then on, we became good friends. When we were in 8th grade, I got my first period and was in so much pain I couldn't get out of bed. My parents weren't home, so I was lying there alone, half asleep when I heard someone crying beside me. I opened my eyes and saw Andrew, tears streaming down his face, begging me not to die. He said there was so much blood on my clothes and promised that he'd take care of me from then on. After that, he started picking me up and walking me home from school every day. Whenever I wasn't feeling well, he would sneak brown sugar from his house to make me warm drinks. After high school, Andrew couldn't find a job. Then he got a notice that he'd have to go to the countryside for labor work. I was an only child and my mom had already arranged a good job for me in the city. I didn't have to go, but I went to find him anyway and asked directly if he liked me. He didn't answer. So, I told him that if he didn't, I'd get married to someone else. Panicked, he said he didn't even know if he'd ever be able to return to the city. And in the end, I decided to go to the countryside with him. At first, my parents didn't support it, but I insisted until they finally gave in and used their connections to make sure our living conditions were decent. Because of that, we didn't have to endure too much hardship. From that moment on, Andrew took even greater care of me. He handled all the housework himself, afraid that I'd suffer. But all of that changed the moment Sophia appeared. Andrew hadn't done well in high school, so he often went to his teacher's house for tutoring. Sophia was that teacher's only daughter. Later, something happened to her family, and she too was sent to the countryside. First, because of Andrew, I treated Sophia kindly. Whenever we had meat at home, I invited her to eat with us. Even when Andrew secretly gave her some of our food or money, I knew about it but I didn't say anything. That continued until the day Andrew and I went to register our marriage. That was when Sophia drowned, and Andrew blamed me for everything. Thinking back on all the humiliation I endured in my previous life, I silently swore to myself that this time I would never repeat the same mistakes. The next day, I went to work at the local broadcasting station as usual. When lunch break came, a coworker invited me to eat together. And that's when I suddenly remembered. Back then, Andrew always came by at noon to bring me food, and we would eat together. I pushed the thought away and followed my coworker toward the cafeteria. But just as I stepped outside, I saw Andrew standing there waiting. I pretended not to see him, but he moved to block my path. "You go ahead," my coworker said quietly, giving us space. "Can we talk?" Andrew's voice sounded tired, almost weary. But what did that have to do with me anymore? "There's nothing for us to talk about," I said coldly, stepping around him to leave. "I'm sorry," he said suddenly. I froze and turned to look at him, stunned. I couldn't believe Andrew Sullivan was actually apologizing. In our previous life, whenever I confronted him about still longing for Sophia, we'd always end up fighting. Every time he looked at me like he wished I could take Sophia's place in death. He had never once apologized to me, ever. I watched him carefully, my guard up. "If that's all you wanted to say," I said flatly, "then you can go. I'm not forgiving you." Did he really think a simple weightless sorry could erase all the pain he'd caused me? What a joke. I didn't just come to apologize. "I need your help," he said quickly, grabbing my hand. I jerked it free without thinking. "I don't have anything to help you with. It's not for me. It's for Sophia," he blurted out anxiously. "People have been talking about her behind her back. She's so ashamed she doesn't even dare to go out anymore." I cut him off coldly. "And what does that have to do with me? I'm not the one gossiping about her. If it weren't for your lies, Sophia wouldn't be in this situation." Andrew snapped, pointing at me accusingly. I let out a cold, bitter laugh. "Andrew Sullivan, do you really think everyone around here is blind? Everyone saw exactly what you two did. We broke off our engagement just yesterday, and last night you already moved in together. Are you seriously going to say that's just a rumor?" "This isn't what you think," Andrew said anxiously. "Early this morning I heard the talk too. Yes, I took Sophia to stay with another family in the village, but that's only because the people in the volunteers' dorm didn't want her there. She was scared to live alone, so I had no choice but to stay with her. We're in the same room, but nothing happened." I gave a short, cold laugh. "And that has what to do with me?" I turned to leave. "Claire," he said quickly, "why don't you let Sophia take your job at the broadcasting station? That way she won't have to face all those rumors every day." I stopped in disbelief, thinking I must have misheard him. "Do you even hear yourself right now? What gives you the right to make that kind of request?" Andrew's face turned bright red. He stiffened his neck and muttered, "Those rumors about Sophia are partly your fault. You should take responsibility and make it up to her." Responsibility? The word made my stomach twist. I couldn't help but remember all the accusations he'd thrown at me in my previous life. I cut him off sharply. "She's already a homewrecker. What's she so afraid of? If she's bold enough to do it, she should be bold enough to admit it. Whatever happens to her now, she deserves it. I should have reported you both for adultery. You ought to be grateful I didn't have you dragged away in handcuffs." I shot Andrew a fierce glare, then turned on my heel and left. What bad luck. But Andrew wasn't about to give up. After that day, I noticed him loitering near my house often. I worried that one day he might force his way in. So early one morning, I grabbed a shovel and went up the mountain to find some soapberry thorns to place around my walls and windows for protection. Afraid there might be snakes in the bushes, I used a long stick to poke ahead as I walked. Suddenly, I heard a noise in the nearby undergrowth. My heart jumped and I instinctively ran, but then I heard a weak, trembling voice calling out. I stopped and hesitated. Carefully, I crept closer, pushing aside the grass with my stick, only to meet a pair of deep, dark eyes staring back at me. I froze, my emotions twisting in an instant when I realized who it was. Luke Harris. I didn't know him well. He was also from Shangyang village, but most of the villagers avoided him. His grandfather had been a landlord before the reforms, and although the family had given away their wealth to save their lives, people still treated them like outcasts. Their family never recovered. Luke's parents had both died of illness one after another. And not long after that, Luke himself had died in an accident. Or at least that's what I'd heard from the villagers. And if I remembered correctly, that accident was supposed to happen this year. A shiver ran down my spine. I looked down and saw Luke lying on the grass, one hand clutching his right leg and the other gripping a snake. I gasped. "You were bitten by a snake?" I asked cautiously. He nodded silently, his face pale. I hurried over and lifted the hem of his pant leg. When he tried to pull away, I snapped, "Don't move." Rolling up his trouser leg, I saw 2 small puncture wounds on his calf, still oozing blood. Quickly, I grabbed a vine nearby and tied it tightly around his thigh to slow the spread of the venom. Then I tore off part of his pant leg, twisting it into a makeshift bandage. "We need to get the poison out," I said firmly when he frowned at me. I tied the cloth tightly on both sides of the wound and pulled hard. Luke groaned under his breath but didn't resist, his hand gripping the grass beside him so tightly his knuckles went white. When the blood that flowed out finally turned from dark to bright red, I let out a breath of relief. "Stay here," I told him. "I'll find someone to take you to the hospital." I took a few steps then turned back. Luke Harris was still watching me, his dark eyes following my every move. For some reason, a strange heaviness settled in my chest. "I'll be right back," I told him, forcing my voice to stay calm before hurrying down the mountain. In Shanyang village, not many people own bicycles. Only Andrew Sullivan and the village chief's family did. I ran straight to the village chief's house. Aunt Lou was cooking when she saw me rush in, and the moment she heard what happened, she called for her son, Lu Janjun, to grab the bicycle and go with me. Aunt Lou had always been kinder toward Luke than most of the villagers. While everyone else treated him like an outcast, she never seemed to share their prejudice. But this wasn't the time to ask questions. The situation was urgent, and I just followed Lu Janjin up the mountain to take Luke to the hospital. Fortunately, the snake that bit him wasn't very venomous. Thanks to the quick first aid I gave him, Luke's life was saved. Lu Janjin didn't have much money on him, so I paid the hospital fees myself. By the time everything was taken care of, it was already afternoon. Seeing that my help was no longer needed, I thanked Lu Janjun and headed back to the broadcasting station. But as soon as I arrived, I saw a crowd gathered outside the door. When they spotted me, their expressions shifted. Some curious, some judgmental. "Claire Miller." Sophia pushed through the crowd with a disappointed look. "Even if you don't want to give up your position to me, you didn't have to destroy the broadcasting equipment. That's government property. You could go to jail for that." My face turned cold. "Are you insane? Get lost and stop making a scene in front of me. Claire, you did something wrong." Andrew immediately jumped in to defend her. "How can you talk to Safia like that?" I rolled my eyes. "I don't have time for this nonsense. Get out of my way. I have work to do." I brushed past them toward the office. "Claire," one of my coworkers said hesitantly. "The player's broken." I froze. "What? How? It was perfectly fine yesterday. Stop pretending to be innocent." Another coworker who'd never liked me snapped. "You're the one who broke it." My brow furrowed. "What are you talking about? When did I ever touch the broadcasting equipment?" "Someone saw you," he said sharply, pointing straight at Sophia. Sophia lowered her head, biting her lip and speaking in a small, trembling voice. "I came here this morning to apologize to Claire. But when I got to the broadcasting room, I saw her sneaking inside. I heard noises like she was smashing something. Then she came out, and not long after that, everyone discovered the damage." A laugh burst out of me before I could stop it. "So this was their plan. Are you sure it was this morning?" I asked coldly, staring at her. "Yes," she said quickly, tugging on Andrew's sleeve. "Andrew was with me. We both saw it." I looked straight at Andrew. His expression was complicated, hesitant. Under Sophia's urging, he finally looked away and muttered, "Yeah, I saw it." "Did you hear that?" One of my coworkers shouted excitedly. "She did it on purpose. Destroyed government property. Send her to the Public Security Bureau." I tilted my head back and laughed, the sound sharp and bitter, hiding the disappointment burning in my chest. "That's strange," I said coldly. "I didn't come to the broadcasting station at all today. Yet somehow every single one of you saw me here." Safia's eyes flickered with uncertainty, but before she could respond, the same coworker who'd accused me sneered. "Still lying? You expect us to believe that? Who can even prove you weren't here?" "I can." The voice came from behind the crowd. Everyone turned to see Luke Harris limping heavily, supported by Lu Janjun. "I can prove it," Luke said firmly. "Comrade Claire was with me all day today." "You're out of the hospital already?" I asked in surprise, my eyes falling to his injured leg. "The doctor said I could leave," he replied simply. Before I could say anything else, that same coworker sneered again. "Really, Claire? Just because you got dumped, you don't have to go after the first man you find. Even if I did, I shot back coldly. He's still a far better person than someone who stabs others in the back with gossip. Andrew's eyes widened in shock, clearly not expecting me to side with Luke. This morning, Luke said evenly, I was bitten by a snake on the roadside. Comrade Claire found me, took me to the hospital, and even paid my medical bills. We didn't leave the hospital until about half an hour ago. His tone was calm and steady, every word distinct. One of my coworkers still looked unconvinced. How do we know you're not lying? I can vouch for him, said Lu Jianjun, his voice sharp with irritation. I'm the team leader's son, and I work for the commune. You think I'd lie about this? The doctors and nurses at the hospital can all confirm it. What? You think we bribed everyone too? Luke gave that coworker a cold, disdainful glance. To avoid affecting Comrade Claire's work, I even asked the hospital director to issue a written statement. He pulled a stamped red-lettered document from his coat and unfolded it for everyone to see. This should prove that she was with me at the hospital and not absent from work. The coworker who'd been accusing me suddenly went quiet. Funny, Luke continued calmly. When I first thought to get this document, I assumed I was being overly cautious. After all, why would a responsible leader ever mistake a good worker for a vandal? But it seems I was right to prepare. Then his eyes turned toward Sophia, sharp as a blade. Didn't you say you personally saw Comrade Claire destroy the equipment? Then show us the evidence. Since we're all here, let's find out who's telling the truth. I must have seen it wrong, Safia stammered, fidgeting nervously. Seen it wrong? Someone muttered from the crowd. A grown woman can't tell what she saw. Maybe there's something wrong with her eyes. I kept my face expressionless, my voice calm but cutting. Her eyes are fine. It's her conscience that's sick. Since it's already proven that I didn't damage the broadcasting equipment, and you claimed you saw the person who did, I have every reason to believe you did it, Sophia. But tell me, how exactly did you get the key to the broadcasting room? Both Sophia and the coworker who'd helped her went pale at once. No answer. That's fine. I'm sure the police will figure it out, I said coolly, turning to the guard. Call the station. Wait, don't call the police, the coworker shouted, panicking. He pointed at Sophia and blurted out. It was her idea. She said she wanted to teach you a lesson. I just lent her the key. I didn't know she'd actually break the equipment. She did it all. You liar, Sophia snapped, refusing to back down. The two of them started arguing, shouting accusations at each other like a pair of fighting dogs. Save it for the police, I said flatly. I'm not interested in listening to your nonsense. Andrew, please, you have to help me. I can't go to jail. Sophia turned toward him in tears, her voice trembling. Claire. Andrew started, but I cut him off before he could finish. Oh, I almost forgot, I said sharply. Falsely accusing someone is also a crime. I'll report that too. I'm not going to the police, the coworker cried, throwing himself to the floor and rolling around like a child. His tantrum only attracted more attention until one of the station leaders came over to see what was happening. After that, I didn't bother getting involved anymore. When the disciplinary notice came down a few days later, the coworker who had framed me was fired on the spot. Sophia was ordered to pay 800 yuan in compensation for the destroyed broadcasting equipment and received a major demerit, while Andrew Sullivan, as her accomplice, received a formal reprimand. I couldn't help but laugh bitterly. Sophia didn't have a single cent to her name. Where was she going to get that kind of money? Of course, she'd have to turn to Andrew. And since Andrew still depended on his parents for support, I wondered what excuse he'd come up with to ask them for such a large sum. It didn't take long for me to find out. With the troublemakers gone, work became much easier. One afternoon, I went to the supply shop to buy a couple of bones to make soup and celebrate a little. But from a distance, I noticed several people standing at my door. When I got closer, I realized it was Andrew's parents and his younger sister, Susan Sullivan. The moment Susan saw me, she sneered sarcastically, her tone dripping with mockery. Well, look who finally decided to come home. Do you have any idea how long we've been waiting for you? Susan snapped the moment she saw me. You didn't even bother coming to the station to pick us up. So unfill. As she scolded, she came over and started rummaging through my bag. When she spotted the bones I'd bought, she nodded with satisfaction. At least you still have some conscience left. We came all this way and we're tired. Go cook something and don't make it too spicy. I don't like that. I had never liked Susan. Ever since we were kids, she'd always snatched my things and belittled me in every way she could just to make herself look better. In the past, I endured it all for Andrew's sake so he wouldn't be caught in the middle. But now he meant nothing to me. I slapped her hand away. What are you doing? You think you can grab whatever you want just because you're hungry? Your mother didn't teach you any manners? Claire Miller, how dare you treat me like this? I'll tell my brother. Susan stared at me in disbelief, her face twisting with fury. Go ahead, I said coldly. Get out of my face and stop bothering me. Mom, Dad, look, she cried, spinning dramatically toward her parents. This is the wonderful daughter-in-law you picked for Andrew. I guess there's no place left in this family for me now. Mr. and Mrs. Sullivan exchanged uneasy glances. Mrs. Sullivan forced a smile and scolded lightly. Nonsense. You must have done something to upset your sister-in-law. Go on, apologize to her. Susan glared at me, refusing to back down. Why should I apologize to her? She made our family spend 800 yuan and ruined my chance at getting a job. She should be apologizing to me. At that, the Sullivans' faces changed. I laughed softly. Your family's money. Don't you dare dump your mess on me. Not a single cent of that was spent on my behalf. You're shameless, Susan shouted. You took the money and now you won't admit it. My brother said you demanded it. Otherwise you divorce him. I widened my eyes in mock surprise. Divorce? That's funny. Your brother and I never even got married. How could we possibly divorce? Such serious accusations. You know what? I should report this to the police before anyone else starts claiming I stole from you. What? All three of them exclaimed at once. Claire. Mrs. Sullivan stammered. You shouldn't joke about things like that. I've always seen you as my future daughter-in-law. Too bad your son doesn't think the same way. I said coldly. Your precious boy already has someone else, and they've made quite the pair. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Andrew and Sophia hurrying toward us. I turned my gaze toward them. See, there's your real daughter-in-law. Your son's already sharing a bed with her. The whole village knows it. You might as well hold a wedding feast while you're here. Mom, Dad, Andrew greeted nervously, avoiding my eyes. Mrs. Sullivan's hands trembled as she pointed at him. Andrew, you really didn't get the marriage certificate with Claire. Andrew lowered his head and stayed silent. Sophia stepped forward shyly. Uncle, Auntie, Andrew and I truly love each other. I promise I'll be filial to you both in the future. Before anyone could respond, Susan suddenly lunged at Sophia, grabbing her hair and screaming. You shameless, or how dare you marry my brother and ask him for money? I'll kill you. As the Sullivan family descended into chaos, I cheerfully shut my door, locked it from the inside and let them fight it out. By the next day, all of Shangyong village had heard the news that Sophia had taken 800 yuan from the Sullivan family. Her affair with Andrew was now undeniable, though the Sullivans still refused to admit it. A few days later, Susan came looking for me again. If you can get me a job in the city, she said, I'll help drive Sophia away so you can marry my brother. Not interested, I replied coolly. I don't deal in garbage. Right at that moment, Andrew happened to walk by and overheard me. His face went pale, but I didn't care. You'll regret this, Susan shouted, stomping her foot before storming off. I closed the door in Andrew's face without a hint of hesitation. Claire, he said through the crack, sounding uneasy. Can my parents stay at your place for a few days? Seeing his awkward, embarrassed expression filled me with satisfaction. Ever since the Sullivan family had arrived, Shangyong village had been as noisy as a holiday fair. Susan swore up and down that she'd never acknowledged Sophia as her sister-in-law. But she still moved into the house where Andrew and Sophia were living, refusing to let Sophia even step inside. Sophia, on the other hand, knew how to adapt. She followed Andrew to live in the cow shed, and somehow that act of supposed humility earned her a reputation as a virtuous and kind woman. But the Sullivans had always lived comfortably in a big city home. How could they possibly stand sharing a cramped little room? More than once I saw them sighing dramatically along the path I took to work, clearly hoping I'd take pity on them. No, I said flatly. You people have nothing to do with me. Why should I let you stay here with your sister's sticky fingers? If something goes missing from my house, who could I even complain to? Andrew's expression hardened. Our families have always been close. Do you really have to be this cold? Aren't you afraid that Uncle and Auntie Chun will think badly of you? I let out a cold laugh. When your father secretly reported my family to the authorities, did he remember our close relationship? Then face turned pale. You know about that? I didn't answer, but my silence was enough. In my previous life, not long after Sophia's death, tragedy struck my family out of nowhere. My father was accused of hiding banned books, beaten by officials until he suffered a head injury that left him paralyzed. My mother was also hurt in a workplace accident and forced into early retirement. I'd always felt something was off, but between caring for my parents and dealing with the Sullivans, I never had time to investigate. This time, the moment I was reborn, I warned my parents to be careful around the people close to them. Yesterday, my father called me. He'd found out who had tried to frame him. It was the Sullivans. They had stepped on my family's misfortune to climb higher, all while pretending to be our friends. This lifetime, I wanted to see what face they'd used to play the victims again. I'm sorry, Andrew mumbled suddenly. My dad didn't mean it. Then, before I could say anything, he turned and ran off. I watched his retreating back coldly, but out of the corner of my eye, I thought I saw a shadow slip past the corner of my house. Later that night, I was jolted awake by someone shouting outside. Confused, I jumped out of bed and ran to the door just as the other villagers arrived. In the dim light, I saw Luke Harris pinning a thin, scruffy man to the ground. The man was struggling desperately. Isn't that the troublemaker from the next village over? Someone said. What's he doing here? He came to Zhangyang to break into Claire's house, Luke said calmly. I caught him trying to pry the door open. The villagers erupted in anger. Unbelievable. He actually dared to cause trouble here. Take him to the Public Security Bureau. Since the man had burglary tools on him, no one doubted Luke's words. But something about the situation didn't sit right with me. When Luke started to quietly slip away, I called out, Wait, Luke, have you been keeping watch near my house every night? I remembered the shadow I'd seen earlier that day. It had looked a lot like him. You're mistaken, he said expressionlessly. I didn't even leave home today. Then how did you just happen to catch the thief? I asked skeptically, crossing my arms. I didn't believe him for a second. The man's already caught, Luke said curtly. You should get some rest. And before I could say another word, he turned and ran off into the darkness. That night I couldn't sleep. Just as I was about to doze off, I heard faint sounds outside my window. I quietly pushed it open, shining my flashlight toward the noise, and locked eyes with Luke, who was sitting by the wall. He froze like a startled bird, eyes wide. I couldn't help but smile faintly. What's the matter, Luke? Passing by again. Luke looked completely flustered, frozen in place under the beam of my flashlight. Wait here, I said. I closed the window, grabbed a blanket, and went outside. He stood quietly in the corner by the wall, hands at his sides, eyes lowered like a scolded child who didn't dare look at me. Thank you, I said softly, for protecting me. Luke's head shot up, startled, his dark eyes flicking toward me before he quickly looked away. You're welcome, he murmured, his voice barely audible. But the man's already been caught, I said, tilting my head. You still seem worried. Why are you keeping watch? After a moment of hesitation, he spoke quietly. Actually, I've seen that woman before, the one with the last name Jiang. She met with that man behind the mountain a few times. Lately, since she's been at odds with you, I was afraid he might come after you for her sake, so I came to keep watch. I didn't expect him to really show up tonight, and since there's no proof linking her to this, I couldn't report her. The woman you're talking about? Is it Sophia Jiang? I asked cautiously. Luke nodded. Sophia knew that thug. I suddenly remembered something from my past life. Andrew had once told me that Sophia's suicide was because she'd been harassed by a low life. But if what Luke said was true, then maybe her death wasn't an accident at all. My whole body trembled with rage. Because of those two, Andrew and Sophia, I had lived a lifetime of misery. I clenched my fists and stormed off toward the entrance of the village. Claire or Luke called, hurrying after me. Where are you going? I'm going to find out exactly what kind of relationship that thug had with Sophia. I gritted out, my teeth clenched. You can't. Luke stepped in front of me, shaking his head firmly. Why not? I'm the victim here. I snapped, glaring at him. If people find out that the man who came after you was a known thug, they'll start talking, Luke said seriously. They won't care whether he succeeded or not. They'll just think there was something between you. Otherwise, why would he target you and not someone else? I stared at him momentarily, stunned. I hadn't expected him to say something so perceptive. If you trust me, he said after a pause, let me ask around for you. I hesitated, then nodded silently. The next day, I took the day off from the broadcasting station and stayed home, waiting. By noon, the police arrived and took Sophia Zhang away for questioning. Andrew ran after them in a panic. When evening came, the sky bathed in crimson light. He returned, his expression empty, his face streaked with tears. Claire, he said, his voice breaking. I was wrong. I stared at him coldly. At first, I really just wanted to save Safia's life, he said, laughing bitterly through his tears. I didn't want her to suffer the same tragic fate as before. But you insisted on calling off the engagement, and I thought maybe that was for the best. That way I could take care of her. As he spoke, tears streamed down his face. I didn't know she'd been lying to me all along, he sobbed. That thug didn't attack her. She went to him asking for money. They fought, and that's how she fell into the river. Everything was a lie. Andrew covered his face, crying uncontrollably. But I felt nothing. Not surprise, not pity. Just cold confirmation. I had already guessed as much. That was why I told Luke to pass a message to the thug. If he revealed who had put him up to it, I'd speak to the police and try to get him a lighter sentence. By morning, when the police came and took Sophia away, everything I'd suspected had been proven true. Seeing I hadn't spoken, Andrew looked up, his eyes red and pleading. Claire, he whispered hoarsely. I swear there's nothing romantic between Sophia and me. I've only ever treated her like a sister. Please believe me. I smiled faintly, my tone laced with mockery. Oh, then tell me. Do you usually sleep with your sisters, Andrew? His face drained of color, but I continued, my voice like ice. You probably don't know this, I said. The day after you two slept together, Sophia came to my door bragging. She said you were so gentle with her that you promised to marry her. I didn't. Andrew shouted, panicked. I never said that. I never planned to marry her. My wife is you, Claire. You're the only one. We were husband and wife in our past life. Don't you remember? We were always so in love, Andrew said desperately, his voice trembling. We were a happy family. Everything was good between us. He spoke as if he actually believed the fantasy he was spinning. I interrupted him slowly, each word cutting through his delusion. In love? You call it love when you gave me the silent treatment for years. When you let everyone think I was the one who killed Sophia. Andrew froze as if struck by lightning. You really think you're some kind of chosen one? I said coldly. You thought your rebirth was a blessing, but it's just karma coming for you. I stared straight into his terrified eyes. In our last life, you destroyed my entire family. Everything that's happening to you now is nothing more than what you deserve. No, that's not true. Andrew shook his head wildly, panicked, twisting his features. It's not supposed to be like this. He suddenly grabbed my shoulders like a madman. Let's start over, Claire. Please, I'll treat you right this time. We can be happy again. I slapped him hard across the face. Do you really think you deserve that? I said, my voice sharp and steady. I'll change, he begged, tears streaking down his face. I won't believe Sophia ever again. She lied to me. She deceived me. I see that now. I was fooled by her too. He reached out and tried to pull me into his arms, but I shoved him away. Let go of me, I shouted, struggling. Suddenly, a shadow lunged out from the darkness. A fist flew past me and landed squarely on Andrew's face. Get lost, Luke Harris roared, his voice cold and furious. Andrew stumbled back, clutching his cheek. I'm talking to my wife. What business is it of yours? He snarled. I was stunned for a moment. Before Luke could throw another punch, I rushed forward and grabbed his arm. But he had already swung again, and the force of his movement pulled me forward several steps. I nearly fell, but he caught my hand quickly, steadying me. Andrew, his lip bleeding, looked at us with glassy eyes full of misplaced emotion. Claire, I knew it. You still love me? I stared at him blankly. You're overthinking it. I just didn't want Luke's hands to get dirty. Someone like you isn't worth it. I turned toward Luke. Let's go. He's not worth wasting energy on. Luke cast Andrew one last cold glance. Got it, he said flatly. Next time, I'll take him somewhere quiet and throw him off the mountain. No one will ever find him. Andrew's face went white. He scrambled backward, tripping over himself before running off like a frightened rat. I couldn't help it. I burst out laughing. I didn't know you could joke, Luke. I wasn't joking, he said. Seriously. I shook my head, smiling faintly. He's not worth it. Luke scratched the back of his head. I don't know much about books or fancy words, he said awkwardly. I just have my strength, and when someone hurts you, that's the only way I can think to protect you. My chest tightened. Why are you being so good to me? It was as if I'd struck him with lightning. He jumped, eyes wide, his lips moving but no words coming out. I smiled softly. You like me, don't you, Luke? I wasn't blind. He had done so much for me already. And every time our eyes met, there was a light in his that couldn't be faked. Luke's ears turned red. After a long silence, he lifted his head and looked straight at me. His gaze sincere. Yes, he said quietly. I like you, but I don't expect anything back. Just being able to see you even from afar. That's enough for me. Someone like me doesn't deserve you. I know that. So you don't have to feel burdened. His words hit me harder than I expected, and a pang of warmth stirred in my chest. When he turned to leave, I reached out and grabbed his arm. Wait, Luke, I said. Would you like to go out with me? Later that day, we walked side by side down the narrow village road. Every so often, his fingers brushed against mine, tentative but warm. I could still remember his reaction from last night, how he'd frozen in place when I'd asked that question, standing there for what felt like forever. Then he muttered, "Wait for me," and taken off running. Barely half an hour later, he came back panting and shoved a thick envelope into my hands. "This is all the money I've saved," he said. "From now on, everything I earn is yours." I stared at him completely dumbfounded, and quickly shoved the envelope back at him. "We're not married, Luke," I said, half laughing, half exasperated. "What are you giving me all this for?" I asked, pushing the bundle of bills back toward him. Luke shook his head firmly and stuffed the money back into my hands. "I want to spend it on you," he said simply. The memory of that moment still made me laugh. What a fool. An adorably sincere fool. He turned around, confused by my laughter. "What is it?" he asked cautiously. "It's nothing," I said, shaking my head. After a pause, I lowered my voice and asked, "How do you even have that much saved up?" Luke leaned closer, his voice just as quiet. "I bought sunflower seeds from the farmers and sold them in the next town for a bit more. The profit adds up." Then almost immediately, he grew nervous. "You don't think that's wrong, do you?" I raised an eyebrow. "Why would I? The country's already allowing market adjustments now. You're using your own wits to earn money. There's nothing wrong with that." Thinking back to everything I'd seen in my previous life, I realized Luke wasn't simple at all. He was clever, even visionary in his own way. Suddenly, something clicked in my mind. "Wait," I said. "Shouldn't the new policy announcement be coming soon?" Before Luke could answer, the sound of shouting filled the street ahead. He instinctively pulled me behind him to shield me. "What's going on?" I asked. People were running through the main road, waving newspapers and shouting with excitement. "The college entrance exams are back. The national exams are back." One young man yelled, "We can go to university again." I gasped, my heart pounding. So it was happening now. This was the year the exams were reinstated. Luke lowered his head and looked at me, his expression a mix of confusion and wonder. I smiled. "Luke, when I get into college, I'll take you home with me," I said. Later, after picking up the registration form, we walked back to the village together. But the place was already in chaos. Sophia Jang had returned and she was threatening to throw herself into the river. Apparently, Andrew Sullivan had refused to marry her, so she accused him of taking advantage of a woman and demanded that the village chief make it right. "It's you who's been pestering me," Andrew shouted coldly. "I never liked you." His sister Susan stood by smirking. You were the one who stripped and climbed into my brother's bed. He never wanted you, so stop clinging to him like a leech. Safia's face turned red as she screamed back. You hugged me first. You ruined my reputation. You told me by this river that you'd protect me forever. How could I not believe you? You're the one who tried to seduce me. Andrew snapped. I only helped you because your father was my teacher. The only woman I've ever loved is Claire. She's my wife. He turned and spotted me in the crowd, hurrying over with desperation in his eyes. Claire, tell them. Tell everyone you're my wife. Before I could speak, Luke stepped forward, placing himself between us. His tall frame cast a shadow over Andrew as he looked down at him. Claire has nothing to do with you anymore, Luke said coolly. She's my girlfriend now. We're getting married. I could feel the sweat on his palm as he reached back to hold my hand, his grip trembling slightly. I squeezed his fingers silently, giving him strength. That's impossible. Andrew shouted. Claire loves me. We belong together. What are you, some lowly nobody? She'll dump you sooner or later. She won't, I said evenly, standing beside Luke. We're getting married. Luke turned to look at me, his eyes lighting up with disbelief and joy. Andrew, on the other hand, went pale. How could you marry him? He whispered hoarsely. You're my wife. Have you forgotten? Get lost. Luke snarled. And before Andrew could react, he kicked him hard, sending him sprawling into the dirt. You think you deserve her? If you don't marry me, Andrew? Safia screamed from behind, tears streaming down her face. I'll report you to the authorities for assaulting me. I'll send you to prison. Andrew froze, his struggle draining away as he stood rooted to the ground. Coward, Luke muttered, spitting to the side. Afraid the Sullivans might try something behind my back, Luke insisted we move to the county so I could focus on studying for the exams. While I stayed home reviewing, he took care of everything else. Cooking, cleaning, running errands. When he wasn't working, he went out to do business and brought home over 10 yuan a day. Even though the country's regulations were still strict, Luke always managed to find a way. But you should still be careful, I told Luke, watching him with a mix of pride and worry. Don't get caught by anyone. It wouldn't be good if they used something against you. Luke grinned, scratching the back of his neck. Don't worry, sweetheart. I know what I'm doing. I want to live a good life with you in the city. I'm not about to let anything happen to myself. The exams came and went smoothly, and I passed without incident. After that, Luke and I started packing to return to my hometown, planning to prepare for the next chapter of our lives. That's when we heard the shocking news. The Sullivan family had fallen apart. Andrew, in order to avoid going to prison, had been forced to marry Sophia Jiang, but he didn't want to, and neither did his family. The Sullivans had originally agreed to his marriage with me because my family could help them. But Sophia's father had died after being sent away for re-education. The Jiang family's possessions had been confiscated or divided up by greedy relatives. Sophia was left with nothing. That was why she'd latched on to Andrew in the first place. The Sullivans despised her. They made her do all the housework, treating her like a servant. And Sophia, so good at playing the victim, endured it all quietly until one day she overheard them talking. They planned to abandon her after the college exams were over and return to their hometown, leaving her behind. It was Susan who suggested something truly vile: to find a trafficker and sell Sophia off to make some money. So Sophia snapped. She poisoned the Sullivan family's dinner with rat poison and ran off with all their remaining valuables. But fate had its own sense of irony. Mrs. Sullivan wasn't feeling well that day and vomited after only 2 bites. When she realized what had happened, she panicked and ran for help. By the time anyone arrived, Mr. Sullivan was already dead. Susan's vocal cords were permanently damaged. She could no longer speak, and Andrew's internal organs had been affected so badly he could barely breathe. He, of course, never got to take the college entrance exam. The case caused an uproar. The village chief reported it to the authorities, and Sophia was caught before she could even make it out of the county. When I finished hearing the whole story, I didn't know what to say. There was no satisfaction, just a quiet, bitter sense of finality. The day Luke and I were about to leave, Mrs. Sullivan came to find me. She fell to her knees begging me, tears streaming down her face. Please, she cried. For the sake of what once was, go see Andrew. He wants to see you one last time." I looked down at her, unmoved. "There's nothing between us anymore," I said, shaking my head. Then I turned and left hand in hand with Luke, her furious screams echoing behind me. I didn't even glance back because for the first time in 2 lifetimes, I knew exactly what awaited me.